and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. A couple of interesting things to talk about this week. The first one is for Microsoft Exchange people, and there is a whole set of new API functionality around importing and exporting for Exchange coming to Microsoft Graph. It's currently in public preview. Now, I'm going to preface this with a few disclaimers. The first of which is I'm not an expert in the Microsoft Exchange API space. I've dabbled, but I know there's people whose entire careers are devoted to this, and they are so expert in the detail here that I'm absolutely not. So if you're one of these people, and I know you exist because I've talked to you, just go read the blog post because you'll probably get more out of it than you will from me. However, I also know from talking to you, you have raised concerns in the past about EWS deprecation and the gaps that get left behind between what EWS can do and what Microsoft Graph can do. And that's been a long-running theme for a few years now. I think this is an attempt to try and solve that. I don't know how successful it will be, and that's not me being nasty. I just don't know. I'm just not expert enough to look at this and know whether it's plugging all the gaps or not. If you are and you can let me know that would be really interesting. Be kind of an interesting blog post, I think. If you wanted to put it together, we could do something cool. But anyway, let's just talk through what this is. There's a blog post about it, and really what this is focusing in on is full fidelity import and export. Being able to export Exchange items in their kind of entirety and then also import them back in again. Now, even as a Teams person and more broadly a Graph person, incorporating things like Loop and maybe Copilot as well, I think it might be interesting to do some exporting of stuff to see what gets stored in Exchange, because Exchange is a rich repository for compliance, and there's quite a lot of stuff that goes into these full fidelity mailboxes. So there's a whole bunch of extended properties and the IPM subtree. Again, I don't know very much about these things, but I'm aware they exist, and so I will be trying this out. I'll be doing some exporting to see what is in there and see if there's anything fun and interesting. But yeah, the exports and the imports are here. They don't currently support public folders. There is no mention, this is public preview right now, it's in beta. There is no mention of any associated costs with this when it goes to V1. However, based on the import-export API in Teams and just the general direction of things, I would not be that surprised if Microsoft did decide to charge for this API usage. The only other thing that stood out to me as interesting and maybe a flag to think about, on the export, you can export up to 20 at once. So it's not a high traffic export, or at least if it is, you're going to have to do some work. So 20 is the kind of maximum export sort of thing that you can do. Import, it looks like it might just be up to you. You get like an import stream link, essentially, like a short-lived link that you can use. And I think it's up to you how much you use that. But yeah, go check these out if that's interesting. Hopefully it solves some or fills some gaps, solves some problems for people in this space, because I know this is like a long-running thing. And so there's a lot of people use EWS, and it did a lot of things, and it was it was doing a lot of work there. So replacing it is kind of tricky, and so I think this is part of that effort. All right, other things. Azure Communication Services have got another blog post out for the turn of the month, talking about all the things they did in February. The feature to have the SDKs call directly to a Teams call queue or auto attendant, that is now GA, which is cool. I know that's been really important for call center and contact center scenarios, so that's been holding people up. So the fact that's now GA is really good. I'd expect to see that out in the world now. I know that a couple of partners will be jumping all over that and putting that in. A couple of other things, sort of shared line appearance, a number lookup API. This is good. Again, this is all about Azure Communication Services. This is another GA one, by the way. It's been in preview and come to GA, but this is another good example of Azure Communication Services going wide and really trying to meet all of the problems that a developer might have in this space. And number lookup is definitely one of those things, whether it's for validation, or just trying to provide more information to a user about a number. Real time, being able to look up a number, the format it's in, the location, the carrier, maybe some of its capabilities, stuff like that's really, really useful. And then the only other thing they cover in their blog is the updated technical documentation, which we covered a couple of weeks back. Very welcome. But that also happened in February. So it's a good roundup blog post. Some of those things we already knew about, but some are definitely kind of new and interesting. So very, very good. And then finally, we've got a couple of minutes just to talk about the big non-news of the week, which is the sunsetting of Skype. The story that maybe should have happened 5 or 10 years ago, but has been dragged out until this point, dragged out through the pandemic. And I think when the history gets written on this, that's probably when we should decide whether it was a good idea or a bad idea to keep it running for as long as they did. But we are where we are. I think Skype played actually a really important and pivotal part in the uprising of Teams. And most notably the codecs and the hardware, like the back end stuff. If you look into it, a lot of those protocols actually came from Skype and the work that Skype did. And I think that primary part of that acquisition was in part the phone book, the personal capabilities, the personal communication, database of people essentially, and the foothold into that market. And Microsoft's been moderately successful in that space. I'm not sure that Teams Personal has kind of got the brand share that Skype had even today, but we'll see how that goes. It might be that Skype just took all the oxygen out of the room, and now there's the space, if you like, for Teams to step into it. But certainly on the protocol side, the back end engineering effort from the original Skype team was really pivotal to the success of Teams in this cloud first world. Anyway, we have a blog post from Jeff Teeper all about Skype and Teams free and what needs to happen now. So basically Skype is going away in May, and until that point you can move to Teams for free and do all your things. One of the things I'm less sure about, honestly, is so one of the things you can do quite easily with Skype is have a PSTN number and make PSTN calls. I assume there's a route to do that in a fairly straightforward way for Teams free, but I'm not actually that certain about it. So we'll see how the kind of essentially Skype credit works. So I don't know how that, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do. There's a weird sentence in this blog post, which I'm just going to read out in full, and we can talk about and think about what it means. After May the 5th, the Skype dial pad will be available to remaining paid users from the Skype web portal and within Teams. Now, I don't really know what that means. So remaining paid users. So moving forward, we will no longer offer paid Skype features to new customers, including Skype credit and subscriptions. Current subscription users can continue to use their Skype credits and subscriptions until the end of their next renewal period. Okay, Skype credit users can also continue to use their remaining Skype credit. Okay, fine. So really this is a 1-year extension. So if you have a subscription to Skype, a paid subscription, and it renews before May the 5th, then you will get up to another year or until your renewal period of Skype usage, but it will be through Teams. Through presumably an app in Teams or something. So I guess that's how they're getting around that, because obviously it gets very tricky if you try and cut off people's subscription halfway through. So I still don't know what that means for essentially making PSTN calls. I mean, that's one of the nice things about Skype is that it makes it very easy to make PSTN calls. And I don't know how that works with Teams free. I shall go and try and find out. And if there's a good way through to do it, then we'll talk about it. But for me, that's everything for this week. Have a good one. Speak to you next time.